I came on to Highlander to be the first AD on the second unit. The original second unit director left the show and they were going to disband the second unit. And I went into the Bill and Peter's office, Bill Panzer and Peter Davis, and I shut the door behind me and I said, look, don't disband the second unit. I'll take over and direct it. And if the stuff I shoot is no good, I'll pay for it. By the way, I had no way of paying for it. But I'd heard of another English director who also had been an AD who did this, a guy called John Huff, who was a great TV director. And a director went sick or something happened on a TV series in England. And he said that. He went in and said that, I'll take over, and if it's no good, I'll pay for it. So I channeled him, you know, I sort of went in and said that. And to my complete shock and surprise, they said, okay, great, you know, come in tomorrow as a director. So I went in, and the second unit crew, who had, first of all, the day before been told that they were going to go home and not come back, then they're told they're coming back, and then the guy that was their assistant director is now directing. So I took over at the underground parking lot in the opening sequence. So Russell had shot a lot of it, and I shot all the action pickups and things. And a part of the fight, and then Peter Diamond, who was the guy that gets his head cut off in there, he was the sword master and stunt coordinator on the movie. He was an old friend of mine, but there was still sort of ripples with a lot of the older people on set, because he was this 20-something-year-old kid that was going to be directing the stuff. Anyway, the stuff that we shot in the underground parking lot was, obviously they liked it, so they said, well, do you want to go to New York and do, the line in the script was, the Kurgan takes Roxanne for a terror drive through New York. And it was originally, they were going to have him in a Bronco or something, and I said, look, let me work on this a bit, and I want to direct that sequence, and I'll go to New York and do it.
You ever played chicken?
I chose the big gold Cadillac that he had, Coupe de Ville, with a white sort of top on it. And we got one, we bought one and we rented one, so that I had one with cameras on it and one without. And the very first night of shooting, there was a huge crash, accidental crash. Although it's accidental, it's in the movie. But it was a monumental crash, and we wrote one of the gold Cadillacs off. So I went back to my hotel room after shooting, a pretty successful night other than that. And I remember Peter Davis calling me in the morning and saying, how'd it go? And I was sort of, yeah, it was good, you know, we shot this and that and this, that. You know, we wrote a car off, but, you know, it's all fine. We just sort of bluffed over it. The real damage of it that was, I can show you the spot in the movie, is the Kurgan hits another car because there was a lit street in New York that only had the lights on one side in shops, and I particularly wanted to do sort of innocent people going left to right and the Kurgan going right to left. You know, I'd worked a lot with Peter Yates, and he had this whole theory that if you want to surprise people, you bring someone into the frame from the opposite side than you would reading. You know, so I did this sequence on this street in New York, but turned everything round. So we had it was a one-way street normally, but we had all the cars, the real traffic going the wrong way down the one-way street. You know, we locked it off, and the Kurgan's car is going to be going through it. And somewhere along the line, there were several stuntmen and women at the front of it, and some of the other cars were extras. And somewhere along the line, someone forgot whether they were going to go to left or right or whatever, and there was this almighty crash. But it was on camera, which is amazing. And later on, I shot a little sequence with Clancy, where he goes, makes a funny little thing like he's giggling at it, and then he drives off. And so the crash was in the movie.
The car stuff was pretty well choreographed. They had a lady, older English actress, and an older English actor who was a stuntman. You know, I chopped the head off of the car, chopped the roof off of the car, and rip it open because I'm just so strong. And that was all pre-rigged, you know. I go, and then the roof was on a hinge, but you know, it looked like I ripped it open. And I grabbed the little driver who has like one of the best comic takes. He's like smiling. He gets thrown out, really good. Gets thrown out, and I hop in the car, and she's all freaking out, and then we just started improvising because there's nothing in the script. There's no dialogue in the script. And she's great. She's just doing the whole thing, and I'm, having such a good time and trying to throw her things to do and help her be what she's doing. And we just pretty much laughed the whole evening together.
Mom. Clancy was just fabulous, and he was such a great guy to work with. I've tried to work with him several times since. I've tried to cast him in stuff and that, but I will do one day before we get too senile. 90% of it, Clancy was not stunt doubled. It was him doing most of it. I had a stunt driver for him, and some of the fight stuff was a double, but very little. He did amazingly a large percentage of that action himself. He was terrific at it.
I don't think I did all the driving. I just did the driving where you see me, because I'm all for stuntmen working. And Andy shot mostly with professional stunt drivers, which is proper. But I did a lot of driving. Not my favorite thing, but I did a lot of it.
Clancy and Roxanne, I did direct those sequences in the car. And it was a fun sequence because it was literally one line. It literally said, the Kurgan takes Roxanne for a terror drive through New York. And I, made it into this, I don't know what it was, a week and a half of shooting or something, the whole, maybe more, I'm not sure. It was one of the first action sequences that were done on 400 ASA film. So I went out and I couldn't afford lights, so I literally drove around at night in New York looking for well-lit junctions that I could crash cars in or whatever, It was all about the lights because I couldn't use any really lights, so we shot on 400 ASA with the stop wide open.
Being in the car with Clancy while the chasing was going on, when we were shooting in New York City and near Grand Central, and we were shooting through the tunnels, the moving shots that they had through the tunnels, I had no idea. I mean, I was in the car shooting, but you don't see what the camera sees, and what the camera saw was really scary, really frightening the way it moved forward.
She actually slapped me in the first night of the chase that I had her, because I had the two of them in the car, and I said to Clancy, just go straight, you can close your eyes, and I've got two trucks coming at him, and they're going to part at the last minute and go round him. It's insanely dangerous when you think of it now. But I did the shot, and I looked at the monitor, and it just wasn't very exciting. And I thought it was because Roxanne wasn't really bothered about being there with the second unit doing stuff, so she didn't have much of a reaction. So we did it again, and I told the two stunt drivers in the front two trucks, when you get level with the car, hit the air horns. They had these huge air horns on it, and they did. And you got this fantastic reaction out of you. She got out of the car, came over to me and slapped me. But I'm very fond of her too. I think she's a great actress. Amazingly, she hasn't done bigger and bigger roles. I always thought she was sensational. I forget how many days we shot for, but you could never do it now. We shot all over New York. I almost got arrested the first night we shot because the first night I shot with Clancy, we were towing the Cadillac and we were towing it through traffic, and suddenly we sort of went through an intersection that was beautifully lit. So I stopped the camera car and jumped off the back. We already had 3 cameras on the back, one on Roxanne, one on Clancy, and a 2-shot. And I started flipping cameras on. And the police guys that were helping us stop the traffic went ballistic. And one of them reversed up the road at high speed and threatened to arrest me and everything. Meanwhile, the cameras are running. And while this cop is chewing my arse out, basically, Clancy was in the background trying to make me laugh, going, New York, New York, sort of taking the piss out of New York. And oddly enough, him doing that, legend has it anyway, him doing that on camera is what inspired Brian May from Queen to re-record New York, New York, which is over most of the chase. So it's a very beneficial accident on my part.
New York, New York, I want to wake. Shut up. In the city. Shut up. Sing along that medicine. Shut up.
Then I started singing New York, New York. I mean, I just kind of started to have fun. I said, what would he do? He would just start crooning. It wasn't cut, because you've got to pay for that song. And nobody was mentioning that to me when I was doing it. But I did it anyway. I wouldn't care. At that point, I didn't care what anybody said. I was just going to do what I wanted to do. And nobody cut it. And then I guess they heard it, and Freddie and Queen moved in and saved that moment too. It's but thank goodness. I feel like thank goodness they covered that. It's such a great cover.